All right, I feel like this conversation has been a bit up in the air the entire season. If you look at the NBA right now, and I have talked about this so many times on my channel, it's not even funny anymore. But I'm going to say it again. The NBA is as wide open as it's ever been, right? Like right now, there isn't one team that is tiers above everybody else, in my opinion, right? There are going to be some people who think otherwise, but things are very wide open. It could be anybody's league right now. That conversation about who the best team in basketball is super up in the air. Well, the Oklahoma City Thunder are making an amazing case for being that definitive best team in the league right now. Obviously, 15-game winning streak. For context, that is the longest winning streak in franchise history. And we're talking about some amazing players throughout the course of this franchise. If we're going all the way back to Seattle, Gary Payton and Sean Kemp, they got to the NBA Finals back in, I believe, 1997 or 1996, actually, when they met up against the 72-win Chicago Bulls. We're talking about Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant, one of the more iconic duos in recent NBA history. Regardless of all of that, I'm not downplaying those teams and those guys, and I'm not saying that this particular team is better than any other OKC or Seattle team we've seen in the past. But for context, that's how good this team has been this season. 15 consecutive wins and a lot of massive wins, right? Like these aren't wins against bad teams because there are going to be some teams that have these amazing stretches, but they're not getting amazing comp. No, they've got really, really high quality victories. We're talking about this game here against the Boston Celtics, who are the defending NBA champion and who are also in that conversation as arguably the best team in the entire league. Amazing game against Boston at home. I'm going to talk about the specifics of that game a little bit more. There are some other more impressive victories they've had throughout this streak. Wins against the Minnesota Timberwolves, the New York Knicks, and also the LA Clippers, right? So there are some really solid signature victories throughout the course of this streak. And it's going to be even more interesting as this week, their next game is against another team that is in the conversation as the best team in basketball in the Cleveland Cavaliers. If they win that one, imagine the conversation. If you're able to ring off two consecutive victories against the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers, the two top teams in the Eastern Conference, super impressive stuff and serious resume builder. Like if you look at college basketball, big wins against big ranked teams are resume builders for the NCAA tournament. That could be the same thing for this Oklahoma City Thunder team. One thing I want to talk about for this OKC squad that I absolutely love, and this is the big elephant in the room, SGA. I was on Twitter today and I was replying to some stuff, and there was a conversation about obviously the MVP race between Nikola Jokic and SGA. And I just really think that Nikola Jokic is tiers above the next guy in that conversation. And Shai is the next guy in that conversation. This performance rapidly changed my mind. I'm talking about this morning, I was saying Jokic was tiers above anybody else. With what SGA did in this game and really putting his entire season into context, unbelievable stuff, and he may be closer to Jokic in that MVP race than I thought. In this game here against Boston, 33 points, along with 11 rebounds and 6 assists. This is yet another 30-plus point per game season. And he's doing it in a variety of ways. There's the off-the-dribble stuff, so we're talking about his ability to break guys down and get to his shots in many different ways. There's the paint stuff, so there's his ability to get to the rim. He has a large array of finishes once he's getting to the basket, and also the amazing mid-range play. He is not arguably, he is the best mid-range player in basketball right now. And he's also growing as a three-point shooter. If you're looking at him this season, the percentages from three aren't amazing, and he's not an elite three-point shooter just yet, but that is a weapon that he is adding to his game. And if he continues to master that, imagine how scary he'll be down the road. You're already a 30-plus point per game guy without an elite three-point shooting attack. I'm going to go back to the mid-range stuff. It's simply elite, and I'm going to put some things into context. He's on pace to have one of the best mid-range seasons of all time, flat out. An interesting stat that I saw on Twitter today, he is knocking down 60% of his looks from 10 to 16 feet. In Kobe's MVP year, he was 45% in that range. In Jordan's 97 year, he was 47%. In Kevin Durant's best season from a mid-range standpoint within that 10 to 16 feet range, he was 47%. That was back in the 2022-23 season. So obviously, smaller sample size here for SGA compared to those other guys. For those guys, that was like an entire season. For SGA, I don't even think we're not at the first half mark of the season just yet. So the sample sizes are much different. That could be a completely different statistic once the 82 game stretch is over with at the end of the season. But still, he is on pace to have probably the best mid-range season of all time. Extremely impressive stuff. One of the best young scorers right now in the NBA. I think within a few years, we're going to be talking about him the same way we talked about Kevin Durant, as just probably being the signature scorer in the league. And you're looking at games like tonight where he saw a multitude of different guys being thrown at him. There were times where Jaylen Brown was on him, or Drew Holiday, and even some Tatum possessions. And there was a really cool bucket he had against Derek White. Boston has like a really vast array of elite perimeter defenders. They threw a lot of bodies at him. And you're still putting up this sort of game. Awesome stuff. And then there's the defense. That was a big conversation today on social media that I absolutely love. SGA is an amazing two-way player, and we shouldn't just box him into being this amazing offensive threat, which he is, but the defensive stuff also really, really impressive. And there's an argument. I'm not saying that he is, but there's an argument that he could be all defense this season. There is an argument. You're looking at this game, amazing defensive play late against Jason Tatum, a chase down block. Right now, he is top amongst guards in blocks per game. So coming into the season, I thought Derek White was by far the best shot blocking guard in the NBA, but SGA right now, number one in that category, third in the NBA in steals. And that's a statistic that historically he's been one of the better at over the last few seasons. And with tonight's game, passed Kobe in all-time games with 30 points, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. So he's at a point where some of the defensive stuff is nearly as impressive as the offensive stuff. So SGA's MVP case got that much stronger. I think he did close the gap big time between himself and Jokic. Jokic is just off the chain right now, but SGA made an amazing case for himself tonight, and hopefully he can do that again against the Cavaliers. Another thing I wanted to get into, another big topic, is OKC's defense as a whole. Number one defense right now in the NBA. Think about this too, is they're without Chet Holmgren. Now, putting Chet Holmgren into context, he's also a deep point candidate if he's healthy. Chet Holmgren is not just a shot blocker. He's not just a defensive 7-footer that can hold his own. He's one of the more signature defensive players in the entire NBA, which is crazy to say because this is just the second season. They're without him, and they still maintain the number one defense in the entire league. Like, that's unreal stuff. And I'm not downplaying Chet's defensive impact, because sometimes when we talk about guys being out of their team's lineup and the team still being able to be successful, a lot of times people think that's going to downplay the impact of that particular player. That's not the case, but it speaks more to how great OKC's defense remains and how good those other guys have been from a production standpoint on that end. This is a team that is very aggressive on the perimeter defensively. They are not scared to blitz. They're not scared to throw these late doubles. They're not scared to really sink in and help. One of the reasons they're able to do that and get away with it is because they have guys who can fly out on the perimeter and rotate at a high level. We saw that here against Boston. They didn't really change up what they were doing defensively in this game that we saw from them the entire season. They're helping on guys. They're not able to, or not afraid to throw these late doubles at guys. And from there, Boston is amazing at making these kickout passes and moving the ball from side to side. But OKC, their defenders did an amazing job at rotating out on shooters, flying around the perimeter, and slowing things down. There was a massive differential for the Thunder in this game when it came to three-point shots. And a lot of that was due to OKC's amazing three-point defense in this game, which is impressive considering that Boston is the signature three-point shooting teams in the league and just one of the signature three-point shooting teams of all time. And OKC was not afraid to double and help because they're confident in their ability to rotate and make things happen out on the perimeter defensively. So that's why they've been able to survive defensively. It's because they have these amazing, aggressive perimeter defensive players who are able to rotate well, move well out on the perimeter, and limit three-point attempts. And their paint defense has also been super impressive this season as well. Again, doing that without Chet. Awesome two-way play here for OKC. People are putting them in historic defensive conversations. I don't know if they're there just yet, but they're on pace. So we'll see what happens as this season progresses here for OKC. You also have to give a shout out to Lou Dort, who's turned into one of the elite two-way players in the NBA. Amazing seeing him go from being a subpar shooter to being a sniper. He's 40% from three this season, along with being one of the NBA's more premier defenders. Jalen Williams has emerged as an all-star, I think, and also as one of the better complementary scoring pieces across the entire league. Isaiah Hartenstein was great in this game too, not just with his rebounding and his passing and just his presence, but also had some really good possessions when he was out there guarding on the perimeter. So again, he's held it down from a defensive standpoint with Chet being out. So great stuff here for OKC. Let's hope they can keep their foot on the gas as things move forward. If they can beat the Cavaliers, then I'm going to start thinking that they can push this win streak to even more historic proportions, because that means within a winning streak, if you beat the Cavaliers on Wednesday, I believe, that means within a winning streak, you beat the two best teams, probably the two best teams in the NBA, arguably. So from that point, it is very, very possible that you could extend this winning streak to some historic proportions, right? Into some historic conversations, right? Like, you knocked out the two best teams in the NBA. And from there, a lot can happen, right? So we'll see. Hopefully they can keep their foot on the gas, but amazing, impressive stuff here for OKC. And we'll see what happens once they match up against a red hot Cavaliers team later this week. This is going to be a major litmus test here for this streaking OKC squad.